That man can pray. And I don't know if it's because you have a little longer beard or what, but it looks wonderful. It's so wonderful to be able to watch what just happened and to be able to pray with them. Well, I don't know about you, but I sometimes find it really hard to pay attention. I can be easily distracted. I'm kind of like that dog, that sees a squirrel and off she goes. And, many times that's cost me. It's cost me time, it's cost me insight, sometimes it's cost me friendships. And this last week it cost me money. Last week I was not paying attention and I ran into a concrete truck with my car. I know. Well, I was actually waving at Jack Perkins, who had stopped in his car. He had stopped and I went, "Oh, thank you. Oh, that's Jack." I turned right into the back of a concrete truck, and it cost me a $500 deductible and at least $2,500 to the insurance company, and hopefully not to my insurance record or my costs, my premiums. But inattentiveness can also cost us and affect our relationship with God. We can suffer what we call a spiritual inattentiveness. It could be what the Bible calls spiritual blindness. We don't even know how to see how God sees. Sometimes we're too busy attending to other things. Sometimes we just choose to turn a blind eye. We just maybe are afraid to find out what we see. I mean, if we discover something about ourselves or about others or about God or about the world. Or maybe we just don't expect to see God at all. For us in Christian vocation, we can get lost in the work and we can neglect the contemplative life, that place where we're paying attention from inside. And I have such a deep longing to see more of God. I want to adopt, a vigilant attitude of attentiveness. Leighton Ford, in his book, The Attentive Life, Discerning God's Presence in All Things, defines attentiveness for us. Attentiveness means respecting, attending to, waiting on, looking at, and listening to the other, the persons and the things that we encounter, for what they are in themselves, not what we make of them. We are called to pay attention to the other, our Creator, to know and to worship Him. Let's try something here for a minute. Take a look at this picture. What do you see? What do you see? Anybody? Children. What else do you see? What do you see about the children? Yeah. Are they all pretty excited about what they're eating? There may be one that's not too happy. What else do you see? There's somebody swimming. Are there other people besides the children in the picture? What are they doing? Yeah, where are they? What are they eating? This is rhetorical in part. We'd be here all day. Here's another one. What do you see here? What's that? That's a happy man, isn't it? What's he holding? Cheese. What does it remind you of? On the night Jesus was betrayed, he took cheese. Actually, this is the grocer in the town of Soriano, Italy, where I will be cooking. And this is the grocery store where we'll be shopping. And this must be the grocer who will be selling us our cheese and our Kellogg's Special K. I spent all day yesterday looking at the pictures on the website of the cultural vacation place I will be going, and I got lost in what I was looking at, and this was one I'm sharing. What we see can affect who we are, right? Watching and paying attention. I can't wait. And according to Leighton Ford, watching and praying go hand in hand. He writes this: if the first part of my spiritual journey involved longing, the second has encompassed mainly looking. Coming to terms with important parts of my soul, bringing my real self before God, and discovering prayer as absolute attention. I love that. Absolute attention to my life before God is prayer. For you see, joy and gratitude and praise can then flow from our lips, and words of compassion and comfort rise up from our hearts. Wonder and awe can bring us to our knees. I love that. An attentive life is prayer. Beth Borum, who's the co-author of Awaken the Senses, encourages also to remember that deliberate rest and keen observation also go hand in hand. I shared last week, I will be retreating and resting. And imagine this as we all retreat and rest and watch our life and our work become prayer. Mother Teresa said this: do not think of us as social workers. We are contemplatives in the midst of life. We pray the work. You see, prayer is communion with God. And here's the point. We have communion with God through the people and the circumstances and the experiences and the details of the ordinary that we gaze upon, that we stop and watch and pay attention to. You see, this kind of paying attention gives us this clearer vision of God through His creation, through His people, His justice. We get to see what breaks His heart. We get a clearer picture of how God is calling us to join Him in His work. You see, God is everywhere we look, if we would pay attention. It wasn't always believed that God was everywhere you looked. God dwelled only in the temple. No one was allowed to see God, or else one would die. However, in the memorable story of Moses and the burning bush, we discover that God had plans to be seen and to be known in a very supernatural way. Listen now to Exodus, the story, familiar one, of Moses and the burning bush. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight and see why the bush is not burnt up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Come no closer, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I was taken by that story for a number of reasons as I'm considering my sabbatical and this idea of watching and praying. You see, like with me, God needed to get Moses away from where he was for Moses to really see something of God. Moses, in the story, retreated from Midian with his father-in-law Jethro's flock to the other side of the desert, to Horeb. And Horeb means desolate or wilderness. And it was there that God waited for him. Also, it was very interesting to me that God was waiting for Moses to see him in creation, in an ordinary, common, dry brambles of the desert, not in the temple where God was supposed to be. But oh, how God can surprise us. God is so supernatural, he can appear in the ordinary. He appeared as fire in this ordinary bush, burning it but not consuming it. So here's Moses, away from his home, in a new landscape, standing before a burning bush, and God was seen and heard through this phenomenon. For there was no doubt that God wanted to be seen. He wanted to be heard. He wanted to be named. He wanted to name and call Moses by name. He wanted to break through this religious convention and fear. Even then, Moses was still distracted by his religion. He couldn't bear to look upon God. He was afraid of what he would see. But this supernatural encounter changed Moses' life. And it was a turning point for God's people. The Exodus was to follow. Oh, how I long for more burning bush moments. Anyone else? But all those distractions. The word distraction comes from the Latin distractus, which literally means to draw or to pull apart. It can be an amusement or a diversion, but any kind of distraction, good or bad, can separate us, can pull us away from God, from our true selves, from the burning bushes of our lives. George W. Bush's campaign manager back in 2004, his name was Ken Melman, he noticed this about distractions. In a world where there is a wealth of information, there is often a poverty of attention. Isn't that true? We're bombarded on television today with this angry political rhetoric, fiery tweets going back and forth, blah, blah, blah. And on Facebook, posting recipes I'll never try, pithy sayings that I'll soon forget, and photos and exploits of people I don't know and I don't care about. And even our highly organized and programmed churches can pull us away from God. One of Leighton Ford's minister friends was told by a potential member, "Pastor, after looking at all the scheduled activities for just this week, I don't think I'm physically fit to join your church." Again, as I shared last week, people, we need to relax. Quaker Brent Bill says it well. I love this. When we relax, we see new details, things that might have always been there, but which we failed to notice because we were so focused on what we thought we should be seeing. Or I would add, on what we should be doing. I'm reminded of the story of Jesus' visit to the home of Martha and Mary. Some context here. Immediately before this story, before this situation, Jesus had sent all of his disciples out ahead to prepare for his visit to these towns. And there was a certain amount of urgency to it and a lot of work. And when they returned, they were very, very tired, very, very weary. And it was interesting because right after that, they began asking, who is the greatest in the kingdom? And you'll remember that Jesus then tells the story of the Good Samaritan. Picture with me for a minute that chaotic scene. Remember that? That hectic, chaotic, exhausting scene of the Samaritan story. And then comes the story of Mary and Martha. From Luke 10, we read, Now, as the disciples went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him to her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, so she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you're worried and distracted by so many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part." You see, as the smell of dinner wafted from the kitchen, here's Martha, all distracted by her duties, snarky and hyper and exhausted. But Mary is relaxing at Jesus' feet. And according to Jesus, choosing the better part. Jesus paying very special attention to his dear friend Mary. And Mary, seeing his delight and hearing his voice, noticing everything about him. I long for some Mary time too. Don't you? And I long for some burning bush moments too. So on sabbatical, I plan to see God in the miraculous, in the unexpected, in the ordinary, in the ugly. I'm anxious to see the God of the universe in nature, in museums and in the theater, in a good book, in a poem, and at the dinner tables. And as I relax over the next few months here in Venice, I expect to catch a glimpse of something holy that I've never seen before in the familiar. And as I gather with my kids and my grandkids, I'll be seeing the grace and the possibility of Jesus in their eyes. And when I travel, I want to be absolutely stunned by the world's beauty. I expect to be. I'm prayerful that as I truly pay attention to the people I make pasta with in Italy, throw pots with in Tennessee, share a pint with in Scotland, and as I traipse in the Scottish countryside and worship in the Brechin Cathedral, as I watch the waves crashing on the beach and select ripe tomatoes and cheese from the grocer, I know I will see the holy in it all. And I will record it all for you to share when I come back. And I'm encouraging you to record the holy in your lives to share with me. And remember, we don't have to take a trip to do those things. Marcel Proust said this: "The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Eyes to look deep inside, eyes to wrestle with truth, eyes to see Jesus sitting at your feet, to see ourselves over and over again as beloved and forgiven and precious. Through Jesus' eyes, we can stop seeing labels and lifestyles and see God weeping over Orlando as he wept over the city of Jerusalem and the death of his friend Lazarus. With spiritual eyes wide open, we can see a new heaven and a new earth, where by the power of God's love, one day every knee will bow, and we shall see that he is making everything new." And so in the meantime, may we begin to shift from a fast-paced church distracted by many things to a slow and attentive church choosing the better thing, to slow down, to watch, and to pray, and be astounded by the glorious in everything. Edward Hayes, in his poem called A Hindrance to the Holy, invites us. Do you want to pray? Slow down Eat your green peas one by one. Chew your food, don't wash it down. Sip your wine and words slowly. Linger long on a friendship. Pause and wonder. Take your time. Have the courage to cancel. To the stomach say no, so as to have the time to taste your life, your loves, and the 57 varieties of prayer. Taste life slowly. And beware, the devil of the hyperdrive is purring near your ear. Church, let's put the devil on the run as we watch and pray. And we remembering God's promise to us. Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. Kings and prophets longed to see that, but did not. Amen.